Hello everyone. Sorry it's been a while since I put anything out. This hopefully will be a quick video, however, as I'm a little brain dead from writing too much Scala and Spark this evening. So hopefully this will be something fun to take my mind off of coding drudgery, and we'll play around with some zones, some crossbow on Illumos. We're going to be using OmniOS in this case. SimH, an old favorite. I don't know if I'll actually bring up any actually emulated stuff in SimH, but we'll get the environment set up. Uh, and this is really just to show how cool Crossbow, which is kind of the Illumos networking environment and kind of their virtual networking environment, I should say. ZFS, which everyone knows is fantastic already, and zones, which make things really easy to segregate and put some containerization around your processes. So we have one physical Ethernet adapter on there. We're going to create some VNECs for SimH linked to that physical adapter. An admin interface and a net interface. And we have to adjust this setting here, which is promiscuous filtering, which we want off. So that the SimH PCAP networking will work. So that's now set to off. You can see the value. Where were we? Okay. We've got our network interfaces up. Now let's create a data set that we can delegate for our volumes, because we may want to create volumes or just other data sets here. By default, your zone can't create volumes, right, and mount them. So we got to take a couple extra steps. We're going to create a data set to delegate to the zone. And now we can start building the zone configuration. Call it SimH0. And the zone path is typically under zones, what I've always put it under. We'll want the IP type set to exclusive. So instead of a shared IP system where we just give it an address in this configuration, we're basically passing forward the VNECs into the zone, and we'll have to configure them, which is kind of what we want. We also want the ability to have those unassigned VNECs that we can then use PCAP on. So the IP type of exclusive, let's have it come up automatically. Auto boot is true. And we're going to add a data set, which is the next stage here. And we just need to set the name. Okay, so we got the data set. Let me go over here. I do not need to get another terminal. We want to add the networks. So we have the two networks, which I believe were SimH admin 0 and SimH net 0. So we'll call those physicals, because they're VNECs, which counts as a physical in this case. And the last thing we need to do is to just bring in a device match for the volumes. So we're going to add device. And then we're going to add the disk device here. So we'll match any device that we create under there. We'll commit our changes. So now we have the configuration for our zone. We want to install the operating system image to it. Now there are other types of zones, things like sparse root zones, linked image zones here in OmniOS. We're using OmniOS, by the way. But this is going to be, I don't know, whatever a default zone is, right? So not a linked image. I guess OmniOS calls it an IPS zone, IPK. I don't know. So we'll go and install the zone. Once it comes up, we'll be able to, at that point, log into the zone, set up networking, bring over some packages, so that we can build SimH and do some cool stuff with it. So this may take a few minutes. So I may pause here once we get a good idea of how long it's going to take, and see how that's going. So, point of note, I am using the bloody release, so kind of the, the rolling development image for OmniOS, rather than one of the stable releases. Sorry about that. Got a little bit of dog snoring going on right now. And this looks about right. So hopefully it won't take too long, but I probably will pause right now. I'll come back when this finishes up, and we will pick up at that point. Okay, we are back. Didn't take quite as long as my clock may indicate. I had to refresh with a little bit of coffee, so hopefully this will be more coherent going forward, but who knows. We got to boot the zone. Log in, configure networking. Here's our zone. Pretty cool. So let's set up networking. See, we have our two network VNICs we added earlier into the configuration showed up. Naturally they would, but it's always fun to check. We'll create an interface. We'll set up the admin interface. We're not going to touch net 0. We're not going to create an address for it, I should say. We will create an interface. So you see our interfaces are down right now, and that's okay. For SimH admin, we'll create an address for it. So we're now up there. But this guy is not up. So we'll use the old style tool. So now we're up on SimHnet 0. Okay, we need to add a route. We want -p. And set up DNS and the host file. you remember what address I set here? I don't. 173. Okay, so we have routing, IP address, and name resolution set up. We should be able to use the package tool. So we're going to need to install a few packages to be able to get SimH to build. PCAP is one of them. We want PCAP, Git, GCC. What else are we going to need? Oh, headers. Hopefully that will do it. I may have missed one, but again, the one nice thing about package repositories is it does make it relatively easy to go and add things if you forget. As much fun as Slack builds building from source are, there are some advantages to package repositories. Speaking of, I really like Triblix, and I know I've been remiss. We got the Triblix milestone 19. I really need to play around with IAM. I have a serious lack of available x64 hardware at the moment, or resources on the machine I do a lot of the virtualization on. So apologies there. I am scouring eBay for an affordable Xeon machine to start offloading some stuff onto, and put a lot of the storage needs there, and that should free some stuff up. But that'll let me take a better look at Triblix and also SmartOS, which my available Intel, the machine I'm running here with OmniOS, will not even boot SmartOS. So curious. It was running Triblix, 17 milestone. Now it's OmniOS, and yeah, so I'm looking for hardware there. So hopefully we get some fresh hardware, set up my new storage server, and frees up some other stuff. Disappointingly, stuff like KVM on Illumos, as far as I know, doesn't run on Ryzen. I'd love to, you know, build something new with a Ryzen part, but hopefully the Intel prices will drop. Because for some of the emulation, I got to use a loaner KB Lake i7 that was a bit overclocked, so I think 4.5 gigahertz i7, and it screams with SimH. Talking maybe 30% faster than my AMD, which is, I mean, that was already decent speed with OpenVMS on the VAX and SimH, so may have to get myself one of those as well. Nice and fast. So where were we? Okay. What else needs to be done here? Oh, we are going to grab SimH. We're also going to want to add a user and do some other stuff. So let's add a user. Just so we can log in here. And I keep forgetting what IP address I assigned this thing. 173. Okay, we are in. Probably also want to set the password for root here. I could have just turned off, I could have set it to allow root logins in SSH, which, to be honest, on my home network I do, for some of the things, the non-critical machines. What did I say we were going to do now? Oh yeah, we got to build SimH. Get make vax. Let me kill that for a second. So we are picking up pcap, getting threads. That's fine. Okay, so no SDL, but that's expected. We don't have X on here. We could bring in the package source repository. I think OmniOS also has their MS repository, which should have the X Windows stuff in there. Could have brought that over, but we will make vax there. Let's take a look. Let's create a volume here. So I brought up OpenVMS here. So let's download this just so we can test this. Okay, so that's continuing. What do we say? Want to make a 10 gig volume? Call it that. So now if things are set up correctly, which I don't know if I did. I should have had the coffee before starting this. Yes, and so now we have access to that volume we created. We could have just as easily created a file in the dataset here because we have a delegated dataset. I think volumes are pretty nifty. We can send and receive these. You can send and receive a dataset as well. I don't know. For this purpose, there's probably not much of a need to do this as a volume as opposed to just creating a file. But I like it. And do we have compression on? Yeah, so we have compression on. So we're actually compressing a little bit, which is cool. We'll take a look and see whether we compress a little bit on our disk image there. We'll go and throw OpenBSD on there. So we've got that set up. Okay, let's fire up the emulator and see how this goes. We used the RA user. We created a 10 gig volume. RA user here to denote a 10 gig, hopefully, if my math is right. It should be powers of 10. Well, hopefully no harm will come there. Let's get the path from over here. Oh no, this is what we want. Okay, so far so good. And is this done? It's not quite done yet. We'll have to wait a moment. But hopefully I've demonstrated how quick and easy it is to bring up a zone, set up networking, extra interfaces. I mean, it is fantastic. Zones are incredibly secure as well, so using them for virtualizing your network services, right? So you want to put a router, put it in a zone. And as the people at SmartOS do, you can also do QEMU inside a zone, incredibly secure. You can do that on OmniOS as well. and it's a pretty fantastic technology. But you couple it with the crossbow, which is all that ability to create VNICs out of nothing, change their properties easily. Couple that and ZFS. You have this kind of three technologies that work really, really well together. Dtrace you can throw in the mix. I haven't used Dtrace to do anything from when you're in the global zone to look at what's going on in the non-global zones, the child zones, the guest zones. But I believe you can do that. Dtrace is just a fantastic technology as well. And this is why, I don't know, more serious work should be done on Illumos. And I don't mean serious work as in the developers that are working on it aren't serious. I mean more businesses should be running their stuff on Illumos. It solves a lot of problems. If you, for example, if you wanted to virtualize network functions, which is something I do in my professional work, or do the infrastructure for how to do that, it makes sense. But the industry is kind of coalesced around things like OpenStack and Linux, and they're not as good for this sort of thing. We'll attach the disk. Sorry about that mini rant about uh, why Illumos is better. And don't get me wrong, I love Linux. I've been using Linux since what, 92, 93, a long time. That's 24 years, maybe 25 years, since its infancy. First distribution I used was a set of floppies called Boot and Root, followed shortly by the MCC distribution, if any of you remember that, and then followed shortly after that by SLS, which became Slackware. So let's see if our network interface came through here. Hey, we got our network interfaces. We could also do NAT as well. Able to open the device just fine. One thing, and there is a privileged execution framework in Solaris and Illumos. One area where Linux beats Illumos in terms of this configurability is to be able to do the capabilities, so that you could say, oh, here's my binary. I want to be able to do raw net and net admin. You could just grant that to like a file permission. So I think we are set up here. And for notes of speed, the hardware this is running on is pretty feeble. This is an ancient laptop. It's a Core i5 520M with a total of 4 gigs of memory. So we're zoned running a VAX emulator in probably the weakest bit of hardware I have, and it's pretty snappy. We do want to install. Again, let's see. This is the fingers crossed moment, because I have not tried this to see if it can get DHCP. So we'll call this zone VAX. So all my fingers and toes are crossed at the moment to see if we can actually get DHCP and all that setup works. And yes, we do, which is, sorry if I got a little excited there. It is 2:30 in the morning. No need to be excited. But yeah, so networking works through to SimH, packet capture, VNIC, crossbow, more buzzwords. Yeah, I want to start SSH. Yes, I think I'm going to be pretty secure here with my it's emulated inside a zone, so pretty secure. If anyone could break out of SimH, they'd just end up in a zone. And you can do cool things with a zone as run. It could be set up, for instance, so SimH would, once you'd configured it, you had your config file, your emulator, and this is how SmartOS does it with QEMU, is you have that running as your only process inside the zone. Right? So there's nothing else. There's no other support. There's no real operating system image. It's just enough to run that process, and that's the only process running, which is, talk about security. So, so pretty nifty technologies. And these are something I used when I guess it was kind of the mid aughts. To use the lingo, we use zones a lot. We still use them in the workplace, right? So to partition up a bigger machine that runs Solaris, typically Solaris 10. I don't think we have any Solaris 11 installs, um, professionally, and divide it up. But it's I'm glad I'm playing around with it at home because it's good technology, and I kind of let it slide. So other cool uses for zones, definitely development environments. Uh, as I said, virtualizing your functions. Um, OmniOS and SmartOS have LX branded zones, so you can run your Linux um, as a zone, right? So system call virtualization of Linux environment and binaries, pretty cool. So, see, moving pretty quickly. Let's see if we can get an idea of our compression here. So yeah, this is one of the great features. So we're using LZ4 compression, which is kind of their fast compression. We could do like a gzip 9 for something like this where you're not I/O bound. Might get you some better compression ratio. Look at that, almost 7 times compression here. And I expect that will drop as we get a lot more binaries on there, because right now it's there's the kernel and the RAM disk, not a whole lot. Yeah, say it's dropped down to 5. But still, if we can say, hey, here's our what would have been a 10 gig file, and I know there's sparsely populated files, and file systems can do that. Other ones, but even if we get a compress ratio of say 2 in real terms for the actual data written there, that's a big win for virtualizing. And again, classic system emulation. Again, a huge deal because you don't have the necessarily the I/O problems where if you're trying to say run a modern web server in a mass environment, maybe compression isn't the best bet. Like I said, as I'm looking for hardware, when I get it, we can start playing around with some more of the ZFS tweaking and tuning, right? So you can add, you can tune the cache, you can add SSD, other cool things like that. Yeah, as expected, we started to put binaries on there. Uh, that's dropping. But I guess I'll kind of end it here because we've seen OpenBSD on SimH VAX before. It was really just about the process of instantiating a zone, setting up the network interfaces, and actually finding out that it did work as it was supposed to, right? Which was the exciting moment for me. Um, so we'll be playing more with zones. I may do, uh, you know, some LX zone stuff. Uh, Running some Linux software. See, hey, can I run in an LX zone in OmniOS? Can I run, say, the Xilinx FPGA toolchain in an LX zone? Might be worth a look. Uh, I also have some amateur radios that need programmed. Cheap little ones off Amazon. The Baofeng, Baofeng. I don't know. They're cheap little handheld handy talkies, and thought it might be interesting to try to say, can we run the programming software Chirp, it's an open source, some Python app, in a zone, pass through the USB device from the global zone. So just like we set the disk devices here to match the device, and then bring it into the non-global zone. Do the same thing, but with the USB device. That's I guess it's a UART essentially, and see if we can use that to do some programming of radios. So maybe that'll be tomorrow. It'll probably be pretty similar to this, right? Because the zone setup is pretty redundant. But in that zone, we might go and put in package source from Joyent to be able to install some packages because I don't feel like building Python by hand. And messing around with Python, it annoys me enough already. I'm annoyed writing Scala in Spark, but it's better than writing Python in Spark. Um, and yeah, that might be fun to play with. What else? What else is on the horizon? I'm trying to think. We got SmartOS. There was a new release of OpenBSD. Again, shame on them for discontinuing back support. But OpenBSD now has its own hypervisor. So again, I need x64 hardware to play around with this stuff. But leave a comment below if you just want to see a review of OpenBSD 6.1 without playing with the hypervisor, because I'd have to virtualize it for presentation purposes. Well, thanks for putting up with this rantish late night video here, and check back. Leave a comment below if you find this stuff interesting, and what you might like to see more of. And hopefully, I'd say hopefully, I won't be working 60-hour weeks for the next, for too much longer before things start to settle down, and I can get back into some hobby-related fields. Thanks.